Okay.
Everybody ready? Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I want to apologize for getting started a little bit late. We had quite a few things to talk about at length in executive session. Mr. Barkus is unable to be here this evening, so please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is audience comments. So,
We have one individual signed up for tonight so far, and that is Michael Schaefer.
Thank you. I noticed that one of the items on the agenda tonight is the approval of the bus budget for tonight. And I did make a call last week to Natalie Hoffman because I wanted to get some information about the bus budget and how it worked. And so I asked some questions, and Natalie was very helpful. And she told me that this past year, the buses in Northwest Allen County traveled 805,902 miles over the course of the year. I was pretty impressed with that, especially when she told me that that was about 100,000 miles less than they traveled the year before. And I asked, how is that possible when you just added a new elementary school? And she said, well, I got busy and cleared up some bus routes that needed to be changed. And so she explained that to me. Now, I've never been a bus driver, so I didn't really understand it. And I've never done bus routes, though I was a transportation director for 1 year in my auspicious career. And they didn't let me near the TransFinder because I didn't know how to run it. But she explained it. And what I was more impressed with was the fact that she has all of her bus positions filled, all 75 of them filled. Now, I don't know if I'm sure you understand this, but I talk with bus transportation directors from all over the state, and they're all looking for bus drivers. So the fact that Natalie has all 75 of those positions filled, I think is amazing. And she said she's only 2 short of having the sub positions filled. So kudos to Natalie, and I am so impressed. I don't think she's here tonight, but I just told her that was really incredible. And then she told me something that really impressed the stuff out of me, that a couple weeks ago, on the first day of school, she had an ice cream truck here for the bus drivers. That made me want to be a bus driver. So, and the last thing, by the way, she did offer me a job. So that's the first time I've been offered a job in Northwest Allen County Schools, so I'll stop with that. But every day, these buses, and I'm finishing, Sam, I'm sorry. Every day they transport 6,150 students. That for 180 days, that comes out to 1,107,000 children transported safely every school year in this district. So kudos to the great bus drivers of Northwest Allen County Schools.
Thank you. Thank you.
okay, next item on the agenda would be approval of several sets of minutes. It looks like we have the executive session and regular meeting minutes for September the 12th, and then numerous public budget fund hearing minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Move for approval. Second.
Motion by Mrs. Slaughter, second by Mrs. Hathaway. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We'll move into personnel with Mr. Barker.
Good evening, members of the board. Tonight in the personnel report, I want to draw your attention to a few items. One that was confusing for me, so I just want to make sure that you're all aware. Mark Redding is resigning as a 90% coach of our girls basketball team. When I first saw this, I thought Mark Redding was leaving us. So I want to make sure I say Mark Redding is not leaving us. From what I learned, Mark Redding a few years ago added an assistant coach to an additional position and gave up some of his own salary to do so. That person, Ashley Strasser, is actually one of your resignations tonight as well. So she's resigning that 10% position. And we're actually then in the same recommendation, recommending Mark as 100% of his designated salary. So just wanted to point that out to you and eliminate any rumors that might be out there that Mark Redding will still be our girls basketball coach. Also want to point out a correction to you that I was notified just before our executive session. In the classified recommendations, it should read that Alex Smith is transferring from Carroll High School to Eel River and not the other way around as it is written. So Alex Smith is going from Carroll High School to Eel River. And then at this time, I would recommend approval of items A through G of the personnel report as presented.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
I move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hathaway, second by Mr. Summers. Any discussion? Being none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Personnel items A through G are approved. We'll move into communications.
So we have some of the same professional learning activities that you've seen in some previous meetings for additional people attending similar meetings. You also have 2 grant donations to Aspen Meadow and Cedar Canyon from their PTO groups to buy literacy books and Falcon mascot costume for Cedar Canyon. And then you also, I think, have grown accustomed to getting a long list of all the fundraisers for all of the schools. Those are included in the agenda for this meeting. So I would recommend approval of items A through C of the communications section be approved as presented.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
Move for approval. Second.
Motion by Mrs. Slaughter, second by Mrs. Hathaway. Any discussion?
I think I asked a question, the structured teach workshop, that was a special ed
Yes,
training session.
yes. That's an autism training, I believe.
Okay. And then we had another Orton Gillingham training. And I think hopefully this is near the end of it. Because remember we had talked about those individuals be trained enough to be able to train others within our school corporation. Is that correct?
I did talk to Dr. Toller about that, and he was going to look into it. He wasn't sure about that since he's also new into his position tonight. He's actually at the school safety conference with Mr. Bidding. So he's not here to specifically answer that, but I've asked him to look into that to see if that was supposed to be the plan for that since this came back.
That was
again.
shared by Dr. Shamanoff because we were worried about every year having to, it is quite expensive. And I believe it's a specific dyslexia training that was passed by statute, an unfunded mandate again. So, okay.
I want to thank our parents and teachers. As I looked through the list of fundraisers to approve this evening, there are 27 pages of fundraisers amongst our schools. And when we look at those lists, it's incredible the amount of time and effort that are poured into our children in schools. And I just want to thank our parents and community for supporting our schools in that way.
Okay, any other comments? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Communication items A through C have been approved. We'll move now into the superintendent's report.
First item that I want to talk with you about is this resolution regarding Jewel litigation. In my previous district, we joined a litigation sometime in maybe February. It was something that I then worked with a lot of superintendents just to make them aware of the opportunity. And from what I understand, in Allen County, East Allen, Fort Wayne Community, and Southwest all joined that back in the early spring or late winter. To give you some information about that, Juul Labs is a major manufacturer of e-cigarettes in the United States. E-cigarette use has seen a surge among youth in recent years, and we're certainly not exempt from those issues. Juul Labs has been identified as having primary responsibility according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture in that. School corporations in particular have been significantly impacted by e-cigarettes, as nicotine use during adolescence has negative impacts on learning, memory, and attention. School corporations across the country have been forced to utilize already scarce financial resources to address this use of e-cigarettes among their student population. For these reasons, the administration is recommending the approval of the resolution which allows Northwest Allen County Schools to engage with Wagstaff and Carpmel LLP to initiate litigation and file suit against Juul Labs and any appropriate parties to compensate for damages suffered by Northwest Allen County Schools and its students as a result of the manufacture, marketing, sale, and use of e-cigarettes and vaping products. There's no upfront cost to the school corporation to file this lawsuit. And if we were to receive a monetary settlement, 25% of that would go to the attorney fees. But this is a national class action litigation. I did ask our administrators just to get some idea of what the impact has been here. And I learned some troubling things from all of our secondary principals that I talked with about this, that we are seeing cases in our schools. Last year alone at Carroll High School, we had 47 cases, student cases, and 8 of those ended up becoming repeat offenders. It's been my experience that kids can easily get addicted to these things. They have absolutely been targeted by Juul and other vaping companies, and they've done it through trying to make them almost seem like candy. And there are some serious negative physical impacts, health impacts to students. I know of students who last year in my previous community that were hospitalized and lost lung capacity from talking to folks at the hospital. And, you know, we're certainly seeing that here. It's my recommendation. I don't know what may come of this, maybe nothing, but at least it allows us to make a statement, first of all, that we're against companies that do this, and maybe there could be a benefit to it too, because we're certainly seeing the effects of that across the country, and we're not exempt from it. So we're recommending the Board of School Trustees approve the resolution as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hathaway, second by Mrs. Slaughter to approve the resolution. Any discussion?
Appreciate getting the information back on the count, because again, I thought you want to get into the litigation world if it's just a minor issue with us, but if 46 kids, that's 46 kids missing school time. That's teachers, administrators having to follow up. I'm not normally into that world of that, but I think in this instance, it seems like, especially given the devices, the flash drives, the pens, the science structure, maybe is worthwhile. So
If there are 47 documented cases, it's probably
yeah,
fair to say there are some that are flying under the radar.
It is very difficult to catch. It's possible now, you know, as Mr. Summers said, these things look like flash drives. So they look like things that students would have for their own technology. And they're in fact, you know, vaping devices. And it's, I know of, and not here, so I'll clarify that, but I know of students who've been able to do it in classes and blow the vapor into their own hoodies and not be visible to anyone. And if it hadn't been reported to us in those situations, we would not have even known that it was happening. So when I talked to our administrators today, to your point, Mr. Felger, some of them said we're not aware of many of the ones that are probably happening. They're working right now to try to create some plans with how we can mediate those situations with students and try to deliver consequences that are impactful, but also try to reduce the number of days they're out of school.
Okay, any
Any idea when a decision is supposed to be
made?
I don't know. I was surprised that we could still join the case. And so that's why I'm bringing it to you with and making the recommendation in the same meeting, because I've been told that the time is running out. I don't know what that means exactly. But there have been some cases that are settling already with Jewel Labs where they have, and I think there's a good chance they're probably going to be filing bankruptcy. I think some parts of them already have. But I can't really say. I think the attorneys that are leading this are out of Texas, and then they're basically joining. They've contacted attorneys in each of the states who are responsible for going out and getting impacted parties.
Any other discussion? All in favor of adopting the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution is adopted.
Next item is the Huntertown annexation. We've had this request from Huntertown for the voluntary annexation of Carroll Middle School, Eel River property into the town limits. And we've had this on our agenda, and I think in both of our meetings in August, and we tabled and asked for some information. They were able to answer some of that information. I think they've tried to make a good faith answer to that. It's a difficult question. I think the board has shown good diligence in trying to make sure that we ask the right questions and get answers to the questions in terms of how this could financially impact us. I think they've been able to show, unless something incredibly drastic would happen, that there's probably not a negative financial impact to us as opposed to the annexation that you considered a few years ago when there was an absolute negative impact. So I bring this back to your consideration tonight, and we'll open it up for any discussion.
I suppose we actually need a motion and a second to bring it to the table, I believe.
Well, I will recommend it for approval pending your discussion.
Okay, do we
Move for
have
approval.
Second.
motion by Mr. Summers, second by Mrs. Slaughter? Okay, time for discussion.
So I do appreciate the follow-up information that was provided to us. Wasn't exactly what we needed, but I believe it gave enough of the numbers to be comfortable that this action will not and should not, even in a pretty severe case. And in that scenario, I think that's the least of our worries, is some property tax loss in a subdivision. Not the rest of it, it's all still part of the other pieces. Likewise, I also think it's important, as Huntertown butts right up against a lot of our major schools, that there are also advocates with the state and county on improving the roads in that area. If we're talking roughly 1,800 to 2,000 new homes in that section, Hathaway Road and Carroll Road cannot handle that traffic of all those houses plus all the students. And so I think they would be a good partner to help leverage that view as well.
Yeah.
In helping work to get better transportation or infrastructure for their community.
I would echo that.
I agree. I think we need to be a good neighbor to Huntertown.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've answered our questions to the best that they can. And I think the reality is it's going to happen one way or the other. So why make them jump through extra hoops? You know, so any other comments? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. And all in favor of the motion to enter into the voluntary annexation petition for Huntertown signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. I believe we're going to move into the. Are you done, Wayne?
Yes. Yep. Thanks.
We'll move into the business report. Looks like we got a busy evening tonight, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Felger. We do have a few resolutions to pass. This is related to our last meeting that you had mentioned during the minutes, that we had some hearings last meeting. And so now this is the action we'll take based on the hearings that we had on the actual budget. So the first item I have is a resolution to adopt the 2023 capital projects plan. As we mentioned at the hearing, the total plan for 2023 totals $1,653,600, and I do recommend that resolution as presented.
Motion to approve.
Move for approval.
Motion by Mr. Summers, second by Mrs. Hathaway. Any discussion? There being none, we'll vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution is adopted.
Next item is the 2023 bus replacement plan resolution. Again, we had a hearing on that plan at the last board meeting. The total for our replacement plan in 2023 is $1,083,913 for the plan, and I do recommend the resolution as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hathaway, second by Mrs. Slaughter. Any discussion? All in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution is adopted.
Next item is the resolution for appropriations and tax rates for the 2023 budget adoption. And in your packet is the actual state form number 4, which is the official form that we need to adopt before the state. This is based on, the hearing that we had 2 weeks ago for the budget. This includes the 4 taxable funds that we discussed: debt fund, our referendum debt fund, our education fund, and our operations fund. The total budget for those 4 funds is $96,217,066. The levy is $30,511,227, and I do recommend the resolution as presented.
Move for approval.
Motion by Mr. Summers, second by Mrs. Hathaway. Any discussion?
Generally speaking, Bill, and I know you gave us this, our property assessed value, our net assessed value has, I know we don't have finals yet per se, but prior years, we've been growing at almost double digits, haven't we?
Yes.
So it helps us with not only this, but also then keeping the rate at a number or lower as we move ahead.
Exactly. And we have gotten some additional information on our assessed valuation, and our assessed valuation has grown actually 17%.
I didn't know if we wanted to disclose that. That's why.
It's fine. We did just get that. So as we look at the resolution of this tax rate of 1.2469, that is an unrealistic number that it's going to land at.
Yeah.
We're actually anticipating now, because we didn't have that AV when we started the budget process. But if we use that assessed valuation that we're aware of now, we're actually looking at about an estimate of a 9% drop in our tax rate. And that includes our general obligation bond that is in our budget. And so really ends up being an attractive situation here with that assessed valuation growth that we've experienced.
Right. So even though we built a school, did a extracurricular or facilities improvement, we've all done that, but we also have an increasing base in which to pay that off.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes.
It is around the state.
Not everywhere, that's for sure. So certainly the state's seen some assessed valuation growth throughout, but we've been on the higher end of it, I would say, with the construction we've seen, the values that have grown.
Any other comments? All in favor of the motion to adopt the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution is adopted.
The next resolution is the budget reduction resolution, and this is a resolution we pass each year, and what this does is it authorizes the business manager to reduce appropriation that is set from July 1 to December 31st of 2022. And again, I don't anticipate using this resolution. In the past, we had to. in that the capital projects fund, the old capital projects fund would be a tax rate cap. So we would have to adopt a large levy to make sure we hit the rate cap. And now that that's changed, the operations fund is a levy cap, so we know exactly what our levy is going to be, and then the rate adjusts down to according to what the AV is. So what would happen is our levy, we knew would be high that we would adopt. It would go to the Department of Local Government Finance. They would finally get the assessed valuation. They would call and say, you're exceeding your rate. We're either going to cut your 2023 budget, or you can reduce your current appropriation. And what this resolution does is it authorizes me to just say, okay, reduce our current appropriation by X number of dollars. Again, it's just one of those resolutions, I think, that protects us in case they do come back and say we need to reduce one of the budgets. I don't anticipate using it, but with that said, I do recommend the resolution as presented.
Motion to approve.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Slaughter, second by Mr. Summers. Any discussion? We'll proceed to vote. All in favor of adopting the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution is adopted.
The last resolution I have is our goals for expenditure categories. This has been something that's been required since 2007, 2008 school year, and this was when the state initiated kind of a let schools know we wanted you to focus some of your expenditures to get towards instruction. And so what was required is the schools had to pass a resolution basically with goals of increasing their percentage to our instruction and our instruction support categories. And so this is a repeat resolution that we've adopted in the past. We do state in the resolution that as a growing district, this is a challenge because we've talked a lot about transportation. As we grow in transportation and add routes, that's an operation and not an instructional expenditure. So we see that go against our percentage of instruction expenditure as our transportation grows. We also construct buildings. So as we construct a building or add on, that increases our debt payments. Again, not considered instruction, and so it decreases our percentage. So we make mention of that as a growing district, that we have these challenges, but we certainly strive to put our expenditures as much as we can towards instruction where our students are. So I do recommend the goals resolution as presented.
Motion to approve.
Move for approval.
Motion by Mr. Summers, second by Mrs. Hathaway to approve the resolution. Any discussion?
Maybe you know this one, Wayne, any chance the legislators are going to take this one back up on, sort of interesting to everyone has to follow this rule when you can pick out which schools aren't doing the right things, right?
Yeah.
And so like you say, we always caveat ours, but at the same time, if you look at how much, and I understand how much goes to education, but building a new school is a huge investment toward education. And I understand that should be somewhat in the thought process. If it's just ever up again for legislative review, I don't know if anybody's been bringing that up or not.
You may have some kind of, I really thought they were going to get rid of it when they changed the funds. Because the education fund is instructional. I mean, it's very obvious on that. So I really thought this was kind of an exercise. They would say, man, it's kind of obsolete now that it's very obvious with our education fund, but I haven't seen it.
It'd be worth talking to some of the legislators
Right.
on the education committee just to say, hey guys, this kind of is, maybe unnecessary exercise.
Right. It's a very good point. We don't always see a sunset of legislation. We see increased legislation, but there usually is no end to it. Instead of assigning an end date and then renewing it if it needs to be. But that's a really good point.
Any other comments? We'll proceed to vote. All in favor of approval of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution is adopted.
That concludes the business.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mallers. Claims and payroll. Do we have a motion to approve claims and payroll subject to audit?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hathaway, second by Mrs. Slaughter. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is adopted. Board comments. Do any board members have comments this evening? Superintendent's comments.
I just want to say we're having an incredible start to the school year in fall. Our athletic teams are having an incredible success. It's been fun to see all of the school events that are happening, and I want to thank specifically Coach Dinan. He gave me the opportunity to be the honorary coach last week, so I'm going to retire as a football coach with a 1-0 record. He told me after we shook hands after the game, and before I could say what I thought was funny to him, he came back right away and said, "Okay, you're undefeated." I said, "Well, then I retire." But anyway, I was very impressed. He let me speak to the team last Monday, and then I had dinner with the team on Thursday evening, and I just am very impressed by the culture that's within that program. Obviously, they're having a lot of success on the field, but more than anything, they're building great men, and they're holding them to a high standard of work and accountability and integrity. And I just heard so many things that were just so affirming as to what's happening in that program. So I was thankful to be a part of it and wanted to relay that to all of you.
Good news.
That's it.
That's it. Okay. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn. Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hathaway, second by Mrs. Slaughter to adjourn. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming this evening.